Alright, so I'm cleaning the carburetor on my Husqvarna tiller. It's a DRT 900 and I've had this 5 years, and it seems like every year I have to clean out the carburetor or it just won't start, and each year I open it up and there's some debris in here. I don't know how it gets in there. It's good clean gas. Maybe I need to take this. Maybe dirt got in here at some point and it just keeps, anyway, I don't know how. But just taking it, I should have showed you before I started filming, but when I opened this up, took it off the bottom, took the screw out, it had just a whole bunch of debris in here, including a little rock or a mineral deposit of some kind, which I don't understand how it got in there. It's completely sealed. So I have some carb cleaner, and I'm gonna start sending that carb cleaner through every little hole that I can find in here and through all the ports until I blow it all out. And then in these really fine ports there and in there, I often have to take a sewing needle and just kind of poke it in there gently, and it'll loosen some of the debris, and then I keep sending carb cleaner through all these ports, and pretty soon it blows it all out. So it's pretty easy to take this off. It was the two mounting screws here that go here and here, and you just take this guy off of here by undoing these clasps, unhook the throttle or the choke, and oh, and then this guy has two screws that mount in as well, here and here, and then you take the front off the, you take this off, make it a mess. So it's pretty simple. The hardest part is getting all the gunk out of those tiny little ports. The other thing you have to be mindful of too is if you do take this guy off, you got to put it back together exactly right, or this won't float correctly. You can see it's spring. There's a spring in there, and I don't know if you can see it, but last year maybe I put that spring back wrong, and it just caused problems. I couldn't get that to float. Finally I figured that out, so I'm hoping by showing you, pay attention before you take it apart exactly how it goes back together, and that so it has a spring to it when you put it back together. Okay, gonna start cleaning. I've got carb choke cleaner. Almost out. Been using it each year. So take your spray nozzle tube and stick it on there, and then it will line up with all the holes you need to, even the smaller ones, and you can start blowing things out. If you're spraying it in, it's just coming right back at you, and it's not coming out somewhere, then that means you have a clog, and that's when you'll take that needle and start just gently poking around trying to get it to clear out. So sometimes they're pretty tricky. One time it took me a couple hours of just poking and spraying and poking and spraying. I even soaked it, and finally I got some debris out of one of the tiniest ports. Other times it cleans up pretty quick. So the other piece to remember to spray out is this guy, and you can see it has those holes there, and then those connect to the hole on top as well. So make sure you clean that all out. I quite often find debris in there as well. And then that just screws in with the washer to the bottom here. So if you have debris in this, you're probably going to have debris in those portholes on that bolt. Something else is when you're putting this back on, I've never had this black plastic unit, which has a gasket on this side and a gasket on the flush mounting side with the metal head assembly or whatever in there. Make sure both gaskets are on. But this has never popped off, but it popped off this time, so it's a little trickier to get in. But before you go to put this in, this little guy and the spring adjacent to it that clip in there, this guy's hooked, so you have to put it on before you screw these two bolts in. Otherwise, you can't torque it enough and you might end up bending something you don't want to bend. So I took it back off, I hooked it, and then I sent those two screws in and mounted this whole assembly back on. So, and once this is mounted back on with those two screws, and you go to put this on, make sure this gasket, make sure this gasket is sitting on there. It should be stuck on there, but in case it pops off on you, that will flush mount against this. It needs to be on there. And then once that's on, this guy goes on here. And in case you, I mean, it'll be obvious to you, but this guy goes right down through this hole and just mounts on here. So it just pops on. So pops on, pops off. These two screws just go in here and mount this air filter assembly onto the carburetor. Trying to do this and film at the same time. Okay. Now we'll put this stem on, back on, choke. That just fit right on there, and then you can turn that. Okay, now I'll put the air filter assembly back on this guy. I'll just mount that on there. Actually, I'll probably get it started first so I can make sure it's running. Just use some liquid fire, get it going. Forget to put your gas line back on. I almost forgot. Things I had to do was I had to spray a bunch of this starter fluid in there, and then I had to work the choke back and forth while it sputtered, and I just had to click it open and close, and if I left it open or left it closed, it would die. And then I had to crank this all the way down to so it was full throttle, and then it just seems to catch itself and it goes. So again, I think I just got some debris down in here. I should probably take this off if I can and clean it all out somehow, but I'm guessing just each year a little bit of debris gets in and then settles into the carburetor. So anyway, that's how you clean the carburetor on your Husqvarna DRT 900E.